If you've ever had a memory slip on stage, you know how embarrassing and even a little traumatic that can be. Experiences like this can make us start to doubt ourselves and wonder if maybe we just don't have what it takes to perform reliably from memory. But the truth is, there's nothing wrong with your memory, and you don't need more repetitions. You're probably just relying on the wrong type of memory and not taking advantage of the kind that expert performers use to feel more confident under pressure. In this video, I'll walk you through the two kinds of memory musicians rely on and why one tends to break down under pressure, what expert performers do differently when they memorize, and how you can start developing the same kind of reliable, bulletproof memory in your own playing. Let's start with the first method, the one you're already using without realizing it. It's called serial cueing. This is where each phrase you play automatically triggers your memory of the next one. It's kind of like following a chain of dominoes. One phrase sets off the next, and that one leads you to the next, and so on. The good news is this kind of memory forms naturally just through repetition. So it's what we all end up relying on by default because it's easy and you don't really have to do anything different in your daily practice. It even works pretty well, most of the time, but there's a catch. Serial cueing works well as long as the conditions during performance are pretty close to the conditions during practice. But when the room changes, the acoustics change, the chair you're sitting on feels different, the nerves kick in, or the piano is unfamiliar, the links that connect one phrase to the next can get weak. And if even one link in that chain breaks, the next domino doesn't fall and we're kind of screwed. Because when our brain blanks out like this, often the only way to get back on track is to start again from the beginning. To see how fragile this kind of memory can be, let's do a quick experiment. Pause the video and try to sing the alphabet song, but start from the letter J and don't let yourself silently hum from the beginning to find your place. You know the song, you've sung it bazillions of times, but you might still find it almost impossible to start from anywhere other than A. That's what serial cueing is like. Each link in the chain depends on the one before it. And if something knocks one link out of place, a distraction, nerves, your pianist playing slower than you expected, the whole chain can collapse. So what's the alternative? If serial chaining is like being on autopilot, the second type of memory is like driving a stick. It's called content addressable memory, but you could think of it as building little landmarks or checkpoints into the piece, places where you can intentionally start from if your memory ever gets disrupted. These checkpoints are called performance cues, and they're what expert performers rely on to make their memory more secure. The downside is that these cues don't just spontaneously appear on their own out of thin air. We have to take the time to intentionally create and rehearse them in practice. But this is a small price to pay for the peace of mind which comes from knowing that your memory is much more secure and reliable. So what do performance cues look like? Well, by observing expert musicians go through the process of memorizing and performing new music, psychology professor and memory researcher Roger Chaffin identified 4 different kinds of cues. Structural cues are natural breaks or logical sections that form the structure of a piece, like where the exposition ends or where phrases begin. Expressive cues are mood or character-based, like a section that feels mysterious, or moments that communicate happiness, sadness, or sarcasm, or involve characters who form a story in your head. Interpretive cues are also musical, but related more to the hints that the composer has written into the score, like dynamics, articulation markings, and all those Italian words teachers like to quiz us on in lessons. And then there are basic cues like bowings, fingerings, pedalings, and other technical things. During practice, expert memorizers don't just repeat passages, they rehearse their landmarks. They pause at them, they start from them, and think through what's happening musically and technically in each one. Over time, these cues become woven into the fabric of the piece itself. So this isn't just a different kind of memory, it's about developing a deeper relationship with the music. Because as expert memorizers work through the musical and technical details of a piece and make intentional decisions about the musical structure and phrasing, character and mood, bowings and fingerings, and the story they want to tell, this not only helps them play more expressively, but it creates a musical map that lets them navigate more confidently from the first note to the last. If things ever do go off the rails in performance, they don't have to panic or circle back to the beginning. They can just jump to the nearest landmark and keep going. Here's a graphical representation of what this kind of memory map might look like from one of Chaffin's studies. Keep in mind that this is just to illustrate the idea of how these performance cues relate to one another. It's not like you have to write this out on paper away from the score. although you certainly could if you find it helpful. So what can we take away from all of this? Well, the big take home for me is that memorization is a skill, not just some innate gift that we have or don't have. So let's take a quick look at how you could use these performance cues and develop content addressable access to your memory. The first step is to divide the piece up into meaningful chunks. For instance, the exposition could be a big chunk, but within that there could be several medium chunks that make up the exposition, and then dozens of even smaller chunks like phrases or smaller subphrases and gestures, which could then be as short as a measure or even less. Then give each of these chunks a meaningful label, like hashtag A major section, or hashtag big heroic crescendo. And keep in mind that these chunks and hashtags won't always be obvious or immediately apparent, and that's okay. This is where you can start to look for clues in the full score, or listen to recordings, and push yourself to make clear decisions about what you want to say with each phrase. Then, during your practice sessions, get into the habit of thinking of the hashtag associated with each section or chunk of music before playing it. That way you're strengthening the link between these cues and the bits of music that they represent. And then when you begin doing run-throughs and practice performing larger sections of the piece, get into the habit of thinking about these hashtags as you go through the piece to help guide you from one to the next. It's a lot like following the sort of driving directions that people would give us back in the days before GPS, like go straight until you see the big tree with a blue park bench underneath, and then turn right and follow the road until you see a pumpkin patch, at which point you'll want to turn left and continue until you get to a fork in the road where you'll want to veer towards the left, and so on. Performance cues are a core part of phase 1, or the encoding part of memory, and one that we work on in the Bulletproof Memory course that's currently available through Sunday, October 26th. It distills the research on memory from the last few decades into a 5-module course with concise videos and guided memory challenges and exercises with real examples that you can use to learn how to develop memory that you can trust on stage. If the idea of making memorizing a little funner and less stressful sounds pretty great, or you've been wanting to teach your students how to perform more confidently from memory, I think you'll really enjoy the course. There's a sign-up link in the description below that you can use to get immediate access.